international trade, but with a California perspective. Today, he'll share with you his perspective on a sovereign California. Please join me in welcoming our very special guest speaker, Ruiz Evans.
Here's the nameplate. This is a copy of the new book, California's Next Century 2.0, Economic Renaissance. I'm going to give a speech about it really quick, and it gets at why, the title of the book, and what it's about. And the introduction. Possible entertainment of the idea of California's sovereignty. I don't know if that's going to...
Maybe put it by the microphone.
Okay.
Nobody breathe.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to make a series of radical claims. And what I'm saying is that all these things that I'm about to say can happen and at the same time. Not right now, but if we follow the plan proposed in California's Next Century 2.0, these things all can happen. And then I'll explain how that's possible. So first, the radical claims. 1, half of your taxes removed. 2, half of the bureaucracy of every business in California removed. 3, the debt of California, somewhere around $15 to $25 billion, paid off. A recession-proof economy secured for the next century. Increased international trade. 100,000 white-collar jobs, 500,000 blue-collar jobs, a return to local control at the county level like you haven't seen since the 1950s, and a metric improvement in the quality of every elected and every appointed official in California like you've never seen before. Plus a couple more. Improved public schools, not just to the best in America, but the best in the world, and I mean in the poorest neighborhoods, and the ability to get a university degree from a top California university without being chained and saddled to debt. Plus, an improved image for America, increased international trade, and again, a recession-proof California economy, and improved global safety, all at the same time. Tall order, I know. Here's how it's all possible. In the next 20 to 40 years, there will be 5 new superpowers with as much money and raw power as America. Their names are going to be Russia, China, India, Brazil, and possibly a Southeast Asian collective known as ASEAN, ASEAN. It's not that America is going down, but that everybody's figured out that market capitalism is the way to go forward, and their economies are going to rise up. The term's the rise of the rest. In the last century, there was America as the preeminent sponsor of democracy and capitalism, and then there was another option, the USSR, with a dictatorial control over everyone's life and control over the economy. Well, recently, something's happened. America has become the victim of its own success. America won the Cold War in the 1980s. Now, everyone believes that capitalism and some form of democracy is the right way to go. Usually, there are democracies at a lower level, but they all have market economies. There are today no more real communist countries. They may have it in name, but they're market countries. They sell, they trade, they exchange money. So what happens in the next century when America is not the only democratic capitalist alternative, but only one of 7? How do we know that the world is going to prefer the American alternative over the other options that they have, that they've never had available before? We don't know. In fact, you have foreign policy scholars here saying that the period that we're going to happen in the next 20 to 40 years, most closely resembles the 20-year period from 1890 to 1910. That's right up before World War I and World War II. At that time, you also had new powers who hadn't participated in the global trade game rising up, and they wanted their piece of the pie too. Most of the world was broken up and controlled by England and France. But then there were new countries, Italy, Germany, and Japan, and they wanted their piece too. They went out and took it. And for a while, you had the beginning of what we call a global integrated economy. Things worked out. But then at one point, Japan decides it doesn't want to negotiate, and it walks out of the League of Nations. Then Germany does the same thing, then Italy does the same thing, and you know the rest of the story. Right now, you have these new superpowers doing 2 things. A, going to the old global institutions that held everybody together in peaceful negotiation less. The UN, the IMF, the G20, G8, whatever you call it. All these other superpowers, other than America and Europe, are going to these international bodies that held world peace over the last century less. And they're making their own international bodies. Shanghai Cooperation Council in China is an excellent example. These new powers feel that the UN and the IMF were built by America and Europe for Americans and Europeans, and that they don't represent them and that they're not fair. So they're making their own, from scratch, the way that they think is appropriate. And they're going to these ones less. And their UNs, they're specifically banning America and Europe from participating in it. Mercosur is one by Brazil. It's another example. Russia's doing it, India's doing it, ASEAN might be doing it soon. So you have a world where people are pulling out of the center and forming their own poles. That's what happened in the 20 years before World War I and World War II. Here's the title of the book. In the last century, the last 200 years, most of the world held their intergovernment negotiations, peace talks, and international corporations did all their major negotiations in a little place called Geneva, Switzerland. If you look up pretty much every business deal, every international deal, peace, trade, shipping, telephony, internet, it's all in Geneva, Switzerland. In the last 2 years, the mayor and the government of Switzerland have said they can no longer be the world center of negotiation for the next century like they were in the last 200 years, because the world's changed. Switzerland was a good center when all of the world was owned by Europe, because Switzerland is part German, French, Italian, and Romansh. So they were able to go to the European countries and say, hey, you guys should talk. We speak your language, we know your culture, and we are the living example of all of you living together and working together. That was enough for Europe to buy that 200 years ago, and they become the center. But now Europe will only be one of the owners of the world. We need a new center that has Europeans, Americans, Brazilians, Chinese, Indians, Russians, and Southeast Asians. I've looked around the world in the book, thoroughly documented. By the way, don't trust anything I'm saying. Everything that I say is documented. Extensively, it's actually been called over-documented, and there's a 30-page reference section on all ideas that I'm talking about in the back. California, looking around the world, is the only place with the domestic diversity needed to fulfill the Geneva, Switzerland function for the needs of the next century. No other place in the world even comes remotely close. Remotely close. So what I'm arguing is that, A, we step up. We take over where Switzerland left off, and we have their money and their permanent recession-proof economy. By the way, Switzerland's never had a recession. They have the lowest unemployment in the world today, and they have had the highest living standard in the world in the last 200 years. Look at it. We can take that economy, we can have that living standard, and we can prevent the disintegration of the old world order. Or we cannot do this. We can continue to stay in a recession like we have been for the last 5 years. By the way, nobody can say for sure if we're getting out of it. We're the worst hit state and the worst hit country in this recession in the entire world, and the world will continue to pull out of these old orders. Save ourselves, get rich, save the world, or continue to stagnate and just let things happen and see what happens. Those are my options. California's Next Century 2.0, available at Amazon. If you type in my name, Marcus Ruiz Evans, or the title of the book on any internet search engine, tons of videos, books, speeches, reviews, etc. pop up. I've spoken at 20 California cities. Generally, everyone's been interested. You can watch the videos online. Thank you.